Welcome to the Political Insider. We are keeping you up to date with the news that matters. I hope you've subscribed to the channel so that we can keep you all updated. Please remember just to click that bell icon so that you get the reminders. So let's kick off with the news. Before we do that, I'm going to have a quick I told you so. We mentioned earlier in the week that it's going to be interesting to see when our Deputy Minister of Police, Kassel Matale, appears in front of the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. It's going to be very interesting to see if Julius Malema would be there, because they are most good friends, and engineering buddies from Limpopo. And surprise, surprise, the day that Kassel Matale comes to appear before the Parliamentary Committee, no sign of Julius Malema. Very good at questioning people that he's not involved with, but for his mates like Shadrach Sabia, Kassel Matale, nowhere to be found. That was quite predictable and true to form. So what happened yesterday? Well, at the Madlanga Commission, we heard from Captain Maxwell Wanda. He was the guy who went and did the arrest of Katiso Molefe at his house. And he testified to what degree the Hawks interfered with that arrest, or tried their best to interfere with that arrest. Katiso Molefe had been linked to a whole lot of murders through weapons and actions and so on. There was a whole lot of evidence that he was involved in some of these high-profile murders, including the murder of Armand Swart, and some of these DJs, DJ Vintos, DJ somebody, all part of the same crew with the same weapons. And now the task team was there to go and arrest him. And lo and behold, when he arrives there, it looks like something out of a comedy movie. There's a whole lot of police that arrive on the scene just after the task team arrived to arrest him. Suddenly there's a whole lot of policemen that are there seemingly interfering with the arrest. He explained what that looked like, that suddenly there were policemen everywhere, helicopter flying above him, and they identified themselves as members of the Hawks, and they wanted to know why the task team was doing what they were doing. So you've got a standoff between the police, which obviously could have turned quite dangerous. It didn't, but it didn't stop this from happening. So the question then becomes, why? Why were the Hawks suddenly at this arrest? The Hawks, these are the sleepy bunch that never seem to do anything, but suddenly they've got resources for days. Well, the Hawks Brigadier Lesibo Makwena, who's got the wonderful nickname Clanky, he seems to be the poor guy who was tasked with carrying out this job of stopping the arrest of Molefe. He gets called by the head of the Hawks at the time, the recently retired Godfrey Labia, who was at some function, and he says, quickly go to that den of thieves called Sandhurst, because there's an arrest. There's people that are saying they're part of the police that are arresting. Go stop them. Go see what's going on. Well, according to this Clanky, Brigadier Clanky, he goes along to this thing, and he said, well, he only sent 2 people, but in actual fact, there's WhatsApp evidence that he sent a whole lot of people there, including private security companies, including a helicopter. Now, we know in South Africa, we don't have a helicopter that works. Suddenly, there's helicopters buzzing all over Sandhurst. He sends in teams of people, and they ask, what's going on here? Everybody's showing credentials. The guy's using his face mask with a police insignia on it as his proof that he's a policeman. The other guy's showing a bulletproof vest because everyone's in plain clothes. It's just a complete mess. So quite clearly, the Hawks were there to make sure that this thing didn't go down, right? And they said, well, once they were satisfied that this was a legit police action, they were going to be out of there. Well, instead, they stuck around for an hour. So much for saying we were gone as soon as we realized who was there. They weren't. They didn't leave. They stuck around. And after the arrest, this Brigadier Clanky asked the Captain Wanda who had done the arrest, what is going to happen now? Because this person that you've just arrested is a friend of the minister. As if that makes a difference. Of course, the question is, which minister? Because we're not short of ministers of police. One would imagine he's referring to the former Minister of Police, Senzo Mkhunu, but it could also be his predecessor, the former Minister Bekitele, who was very comfortable, with criminals. So it was just crazy. And there was a testimony of one of the people that was sent to go and investigate this arrest on behalf of the Hawks, Captain Barry Kruger, who says this thing was a complete mess. He had to rush back from north of Pretoria. There were phone calls to all kinds of people. Yeah, you would have thought that there's some coordination here, but turns out nothing. Right? The Hawks established that it was a legitimate operation. They couldn't stop it, and that's what happened. But it doesn't stop the fact that it looks quite bad that the Hawks suddenly found a disproportionate interest in the arrest of a very serious criminal figure. So that was the news when it came to the commissions yesterday. It's not looking good for some of the people in the Hawks. The former head general Godfrey Labia, Shadrach Sabia, the head in Gauteng, and all these other role players who seem to be more inclined to worry about the minister's friends than what they are to enforce the law. So moving along, but on a similar note, remember the other day we mentioned that Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi had to issue an apology to former Minister Bekitele because he had put in his statement that Bekitele had sent his bank account to Kat Matlala, his bank account details to Kat Matlala, and the implication was that that was to receive money. And it turned out it was somebody else's bank account. And he was just a little bit hasty as to who he's accusing. He seems to have his accusation gun on automatic. He's just accusing everybody of everything. And it was likely that when you're accusing the whole world of stuff, something's wrong. But in any case, he did sign an affidavit to that effect. And now he's had to retract it. But remember, along the way, Mkhwanazi's made a few enemies. And one of those enemies he's made is the leader of the National Coloured Congress, that one-seat party, Fadil Adams, who Mkhwanazi has said Fadil Adams had improperly leaked classified information. So in return, Fadil Adams has laid perjury charges against Mkhwanazi for saying that Bekitele had given his bank details to Kat Matlala. Well, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of counter-punching from both sides. But certainly some of Mkhwanazi's claims are going to be questioned. There's going to be legal action. It's definitely going to happen. We also don't like to lose focus and worry only about the commissions, because there's more stuff that's happening in South Africa. And there's something that's quite concerning, because it follows a trend that we've now heard a lot of, and it continues to happen. And that is that certain municipalities and metros, especially those with budget, seem to be completely infiltrated by mafias. And when the mafias don't get their way, people die. And if as we've said before, if you think it's only the Tembisa hospital that they're stealing money from, I think you need to just think about it. You've got that understanding of how you can get to this budget, in that case for hospitals. We know that other budgets that you can get to is water. You destroy the infrastructure so that you've got a water tanker mafia. We know about construction mafia. We know about everything. We also know about electricity mafias. Well, there's a problem in the Mangaung metro, formerly Bloemfontein. And there was the fourth killing, execution style, of somebody who is trying to do their job at Mangaung metro. And the person who was murdered is Mbayoselu Sarel May, a 51-year-old health and safety manager at Sentlek, which is the name of the electricity provider in Bloemfontein. Right, they do electricity provision and distribution. Now, he is, as I said, the fourth person to be executed who worked there in that metro. We've previously had Lezuko Nklabezo, who worked at the Department of Water and Sanitation in Mangaung. And then Sentlek seems to be a popular one. Andries Mkoke, as well as David Kanda. He was another manager at Sentlek. And they've been killed, gunned down, assassinated, call it what you will, right? And the only thing that springs to mind is that the Mangaung posted a 260 million rand loss in electricity. That's a lot of money. And you can buy a few hitmen for that amount of money, because it seems like anybody that stands in the way of these syndicates is going to be 6 foot under. We saw it with Babita Diakaran in Kuruleni. We've seen it with Mpo Mafolo also in Kuruleni. When those syndicates want something, you better not stand in their way, or else you could end up dead. So it's a very worrying turn of events that in Mangaung there's the same thing happening, but because it's down there and there's not a lot of news coverage, it doesn't get covered as much as what it needs to. But there's definitely further investigation. And it does lead credence to the idea that the political killings task team and the work that they were doing that led them to the people that stole money from Tembisa Hospital and the people that buy Lamborghinis and so on. This is a national problem. It's not just KwaZulu-Natal. It's not just Gauteng. The police really have to do something here, or else it's going to, risk the future of the country. On to some of the politics. We know that in the aftermath of the general and provincial elections of 2024, there was a really, really close situation in KZN, the province, where the Mkhonto Wesizwe party did so well, but failed to get an outright majority. Together with the EFF, they came 1 seat short of getting a majority. In fact, there was a 1-seat swing to give power to either the coalition of IFP, Democratic Alliance, ANC, or MK-EFF. And that swing vote belonged to that IFP splinter party called the National Freedom Party. 1 seat. And when you've got 1 seat that can change the government in a place, it's worth billions of rand in terms of contracts that you control. And that one person can do very nicely, thank you, in switching sides. Well, it looks like that coalition may just fall because the NFP candidate there seems to be quite determined to move. And this gives further credence to what people are saying, where if we're in the coalition age, we should have thresholds. In other words, if you've got below a certain percentage of votes, your seat doesn't count. That will stop the situation that we've seen in so many metros, provinces, where 1-seat or 2-seat organizations literally can hold sway. The reason is that it's just so much easier to get those people to play the game, to sell their vote, to sell their seat for more money, and then to bargain, and the other guys come with a better offer. It's not a good idea. Thresholds happen in every country where you have a coalition, and it's time that South Africa considers having thresholds. That keeps us up to date. The news will flow. We'll see you again soon on the Political Insider. Thank you for joining me.